Hey guys, welcome to TST Garage. I'm Bart. Today in the shop with me is a 24 and up Kawasaki ZX-6R, also known as 636. On this particular model, we have an integrated taillight, a Yosh exhaust, a bunch of crash protection components. We already did a bunch of work to it, but still kept the OEM fender. And in this video, we're gonna eliminate that fender and replace that with our low mount fender eliminator. Low mount fender eliminator consists of 3 sub kits, as you see here. One of the kits is right here. This is the Closeout. When you ditch your OEM fender, there is a gaping hole left in your undertail. This Closeout is made of really nice CNC machined aluminum, black anodized. It is stylized very nicely, and that will close that gaping hole in the undertail, prevent some debris and road grime from entering your bike, and also make it look cosmetically finished. And that'll set us up for remounting the license plate bracket in a lower location, which is basically here, undertail. Some people call this an undertail bracket, some people call it a low mount, whatever you call it. It really looks the biz, but it's not allowed in some jurisdictions. So before you purchase and install, make sure that it will be allowed for your end use case. If these parts are not what you're looking for, if you're looking for a more standard looking fender eliminator, we do have that. We have 2 different options. We have a standard and adjustable version that mounts to this Closeout, and it ends up being mounted roughly where this fender is. It's just much more minimal. We have that on our website, tstindustries.com, so you can check that out there. We also have videos showing you how to install those parts as well. You can find those on YouTube on our channel there. Now, we also include this license plate mounting kit here. It has some nice anodized washers with it. On the table with me are the red ones. We do have a choice for you to make. When you drop these items in your cart, it'll ask you what flavor, color you want for your bike. We chose red because it goes very nicely with this scheme. You'll be able to select red, black, blue, gold, silver, maybe some other colors in the future. We've gone with these. The reason why we provide this particular hardware is because this bracket sits pretty close to the undertail, and we want to be able to attach a license plate to there without making contact with the undertail. If you choose to go with some other mounting method, just make sure that it's short enough, low profile enough that you don't gouge up your undertail. Now, we remove the fender, we ditch all the lighting. We do have separate videos showing you how to install our license plate light, which is a separate component. It is not typically included in these kits. You build your custom kit on our website. So if you need a license plate light, please include it in there. We do have a separate video, but in this video, I will show you how to route this guy and connect it in there because we're already in there. It's simple enough. Just note that it is a separate kit. Also, another note I want to make is you ditch your fender, you ditch your signals. Once your signals are gone, nobody knows what you intend to do when you want to make turns. So we do sell replacement signals and kits that will enable plug-and-play connectivity and also enable the actual physical mounting onto different locations on the bike. We do have separate videos for that. We also have an integrated taillight, which is already installed on this bike, so we will be working around that. You catch a glimpse of what that looks like. It really does look the biz. It's one of our best-selling taillights. I'm really proud of it. It's pretty awesome. Check it out, tstindustries.com. Now, I've done a lot of yapping here. As you could probably tell, I'm pretty spun up to get this mounted on the bike and show you how easy it is and how awesome it looks. So let's get wrenching. First step will consist of removing the license plate off the bike, and then we'll get to the seats up top. Next step will involve getting into the wiring here. If it's easier for you to manipulate the wiring, go ahead and undo this cable management clip. So like I mentioned in the intro, we do have an integrated taillight already connected here, which means we will have the main 3-position connector and the signal connectors already taken up. So the fender lighting connection would only involve removing the license plate light, which is this 2-position connector. If you still have stock signaling plugged in, these 2 plugs will have to come out. Now we are ready to remove the fender physically, and that is done via the removal of these 6 fasteners here. These are 5mm Allen tool accepting fasteners. These are Phillips heads. I will remove the Phillips first. None of this hardware will be reused, so I'm gonna reinstall it on the Fender chunk for storage. Once I start working on this last one here, I do manipulate the top with the tool, and the bottom is supported by hand so that it doesn't just drop off. I will guide all the wires and connectors through this hole in the undertail. Now with the fender gone, we still have this one screw here. Let's take that out, and we will move forward on the bike to here. This area, our license plate bracket has these long member ears that go in through the bottom and up to the top, and they fasten to these existing locations. We will remove the fasteners from here now. Start with the left side. I'm gonna use a 10mm box wrench or open-ended on the nut, and a 5mm on the fastener head. Don't take the nut off all the way with the tool, because then I will run the risk of losing that nut. It will travel up. I'll grasp it by hand finally here. Make sure I have good force on it to spin off the rest of the thread. Now these fasteners here will be reused, so let's keep those off to the side. I'm going to perform the same thing on this side of the bike. All right. Now, since this is a pretty simple thing to do, I'd like to get this in place. As you see, it does have a swoop to it, and when you're looking at it this way, there's a little divot here. This is where your license plate light wire is going to go over. That goes to the top. If you position it like this under the bike and bring the ears through to here, you can fasten them up right away. We are going in between the subframe and the sub tray to make it come out on the inboard side. As you can see, subframe, sub tray. Same on the other side. And we are going to use the same screws. The alignment can be a little challenging because the sub tray does droop once you unbolt it here. So just be patient, and if you can't find the hole right away, make sure that you're not just moving around the bracket, but also the sub tray. You can see I'm moving the entire sub tray here, and that will bring my hole back into alignment. I'll now attempt to get this nut back on here. It is cumbersome for my big hands. You can use a tool. Just make sure that you don't drop this nut into this area, because it will move down here and you have to take panels off. That's no fun. All right, now I have thread engagement here. Before I tighten it down, I will manipulate my license plate bracket up and down. It does have the ability to be adjusted, but it does have a pretty flat end here. So what I like to do is push it up as far as it'll go, and that means that that flat end will register against the back side of this, or bottom side rather, under here. And that will keep it in the orientation we want to leave it in. Now it may want to ramp up on you a little bit, so by that I mean it ramps up towards the inboard side, because this does have a curved geometry going from out wall to the top wall. So let's go ahead and tighten down on these fasteners just a little bit. and give us a better adjustment ability. Going a little too far, the bottom down. I want to give it like a millimeter of play. I am going to go ahead and tighten down all the way on both fasteners now. All right, that part's complete. We're gonna move back to the closeout area here. The first thing to know about the closeout is that we have left one open hole for wiring. Should you be wanting to run wiring through from the outside to the inside, for this particular installation, we are gonna block that off because all of our signaling will be elsewhere and our license plate light will be routed somewhere else as well, so we don't need to pass wires through here. The closeout kit does include the shorter bolt, shorter screw that goes through here, and the largest washer. We'll cap that off along with a lock nut. Make sure that the locking element sticks up and away from the washer, like so. There is a nylon locking element in here. This connection will require a 10mm open-ended or box wrench, like you see here, and a 4mm Allen. Tighten that down all the way. I'm going to grab the rest of this hardware and show you what all these locations get. So the longer countersunk screw goes through the outside, and then it's going to be 4 identical sets of hardware. From the bottom side, we're going to do one of these black spacers. We're going to multiply that by 4. But now, when we go to put this in from the bottom, we have all 4 fasteners already in place because they have to be in place to hold our spacers. So I'm going to quickly go grab some blue painter's tape, and I'm going to close this area off after I get all of my fasteners in. That way I'm just working with one chunk. All right, I have all of my 4 screws populated in here. I'm going to put my blue tape over them. It'll be easy enough to find the tool holes just like that. Now I'm going to grab my spacers. I can flip this over without anything dislodging. Get these guys populated. And here we go. I'm going to insert that from the bottom. Now we have protruding screws here. Each one of these fasteners is going to receive the small washer and a nylock locking nut. Again, it's important to make sure that the locking element is away from the mounting surface. So at this point I have all of these fasteners captive. I could potentially just jam my tool through the blue tape and start tightening them, or at this point I can ditch the blue tape. Choice is yours. My wrench here is going to be cumbersome to use, so I'm going to switch to a 10mm socket. Screws do have a little bit of tolerance against the mounting holes, so before I cinch all this down, I'm going to make sure I have even gaps all around the perimeter. I want to produce the same gap all around. That makes it look the nicest. All right, that part's done. All right, now we're going to start mounting our license plate light. I've taken the opportunity to stretch the wire out. Like I said in the intro, we are going over this little divot. And this is how it's gonna sit. Our license plate is actually going to clamp it against the license plate bracket, like so. You can either choose to strip off the red masking and use the double stick tape behind there. Just know this is high bond stuff from 3M, and it is a permanent adhesive. When you go to remove that at some point, you can't re-stick it, but it sticks really, really, really strong. So make that choice for yourself. I typically just clamp them in place like you just saw, no big deal. Now you could either go up to the inside with the wire through the left or the right side. I'm gonna go up the right side so I can illustrate to you guys what I'm doing. Either side's okay. Got plenty of wire so we can make sure that it reaches where it needs to go. I'm going right in this bracket location. There is a split between the subtray and the subframe. And as you can see, I'm going on the inboard side of this bracket so that we don't have to go outside. Just gonna have the simplest possible routing. And just gonna leave slack here. Very minimal appearance here. You can use zip ties, wire ties, whatever, to get that cinched off around this bracket. If you choose to, that's fine. Now I need to get this wire up through the bodywork to where I'm going to connect it. Before we get to the wiring, I do want to put the license plate on. Make sure license plate light is hanging where I want it to. Bring our license plate into view. I also grabbed the hardware that will be used for the mounting purposes. We have a little countersunk screw that fits into our anodized washer. The anodized washer does have a countersunk hole to accept this screw, like so. Makes it flat on the outside, and that will hold our license plate to the bracket here. I am going to grab the nut with a needle nose plier that will help me hold it in place. I suppose I can, yeah. Let's go ahead and use a box wrench instead. It's an 8mm box wrench. I have these ratcheting guys. Just need to make sure it's set in the correct direction of action. Gonna get my nut into position here. And I'm using a 3mm Allen on the screw side. Once I engage the threads, the whole job gets a whole bunch easier. All right. Repeat these steps with the other hardware. I'm not gonna bottom this out all the way. I'm gonna leave a little bit of looseness so that we can adjust. Let's quickly go over a couple of nuances here. With the license plate hardware still loose, you have side to side and some limited up and down movement possible with the license plate. So this is where you center your license plate on the setup, making sure to center your license plate light as well. That looks good visually to me. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this down, but I want to make an additional note here. This whole bracket is held by two pinned connections up top. The two screws that I mounted it into the bike with are those pinned connections. Pinned connections mean that you have a swivel. I use the top side of that bracket, which is flat, to align it with the subframe. We have determined that this setup works really well with a standard United States size license plate in this location when it's adjusted like that. Now, this is a standard bike, it hasn't been lowered, it's stock, so we know it'll work in this configuration. We've bottomed out this bike with this setup that you see here, and there was no contact between any of the parts. If your bike is lowered, all bets are off. You will need to adjust around that. That's why we left a little bit of adjustability in this entire system, but it is your responsibility to make it safe. So if you are in the predicament where your bike is lowered or altered in some other way that makes it non-standard for this equipment, you will be responsible for making sure that it will function and not make contact with anything during your suspension action while you ride. All right, now I've bottomed these screws out. Now everything's held in place really nicely. It is level, it is symmetric side to side. Now we can go ahead and wire in the license plate light. All right, now we will need to run this wire all the way back here to this area and connect it into this license plate light connection on the bike. My recommendation is do not go over the subframe. The seat does contact some areas here, and over time, if you do have contact, if this gets clamped and rubbed on, it will disconnect. So we want to go under. You either go under the bodywork and up through the top, or within the subframe here, and that is what I prefer. That makes sure that all of my wiring is protected. It's just a little bit difficult to get through here because your ECU is in the way and there are other components in here, seat latch. So you can either use patience and poke it through, remove some components, or you can use a FID type device. I do have this thing that I made out of wire. A coat hanger will work too. Just get it through the routing that you want the wire to follow and get to the area where the wire in question is, and then snake it up just like that. It's very, very easy. All right, now we are here on the right side. We need to get over to the left. Just gonna go around and under the ECU, in between the relay box and the ECU. There's a nice rubber grommet there, or an entire rubber molded piece that will hold that for me, and it will not sneak out of there. If you just get around it and give it a little tug, it locks itself in place. Now we do have some excess. You can possibly cut it off, but I find it better to just tuck it away. The extra length actually makes the wire stay where I want it to stay. I'll shove more of it upstream here after we make the connection, because I'll likely dislodge it again. All right, so we have our red wire is the positive wire, black is the ground for our license plate light. Here on the Kawi, we have brown with yellow is the positive, black with yellow is the negative. So you would connect it in this configuration here. Now, obviously, you don't have an OEM connector on here. The license plate light is universalized for many, many different use cases. It does come with posi-tap connectors. I'll show you how to use these. You can either tap into here in the scheme I just described, or most people do not reuse these assemblies. We can snip off the license plate light connector and a little bit of the wire from here. That is what I prefer to do. I've done that here. And now we just have two black wires in here. Well, what do we do about that? We need to figure out the polarity. So we plug it in, make sure that the bike is not turned on. We don't want this to be powered. And then we recognize that the black and yellow, which is ground, is on this side, and it'll be this wire. So let's now grab our posi-tap. I'm going to remove the larger screw-on cap from that connector. It does expose this slit that fits around the wire that we intend to connect into. like so. Now this portion's threaded and it accepts this feature that is a piercing element that will pierce into our wire. Now these connectors can be hard to find if you drop them into the bike, so make sure you're holding onto them tightly, or possibly perform this on the side of the bike so if they drop, they don't drop into the bike, and then requiring a bunch of disassembly. I'm going to perform this on the other side. All right, once that's done, I will remove the smaller screw-on cap. And notice there's a blunt side, and then there is an end with threads on it. We determined that this wire leads to the ground side, so we will grab the black wire, pass it through the blunt side and make it stick out on the threaded side, and then go ahead and turn those threads in while maintaining positive pressure on this wire to remain protruding past the end of the threads. Once this tightens down, give it a little tug test. That is now connected. Repeat the steps here. All right, now I'm going to grab the key, power up the bike, just to make sure that before I go any further, I actually do have light coming out of here, and I do, so that's good to go. Now, we made that connection. Now it's super convenient to remove this. Now you have a plug and play connection. However, when I cut this wire, there's no way to insulate it really, unless I keep a longer loom, put something over it. So there is the possibility that this will at some point make contact with a grounded area and blow a fuse. We don't want to do that. So let's go ahead and grab some electrical tape and get that area insulated nicely. All right, looks nice and neat. Now, let's get all of our wiring back into the boot. And at this point, we can either, one second, let me get this servo buddy back in there. Make it nice and neat as we can. Now we can actually bunch this up and put it in the boot here, but I do like it to go on the bottom side of that ECU, all around the ECU. That will keep those wires away from our latch elements here. All right, now let's re-engage this guy here that we took off in an earlier step. Final inspection, everything's nice and neat. No wires are in the way of anything. Your trunk space is not occupied. Let's go ahead and get the seats back on. And now this job's complete. All right, you guys, as you can see, we took this bike from plain Jane and turned it into this beautiful sport-inspired machine. In just a couple minutes, we have our license plate hanging on our low mount bracket. We have our license plate light illuminating, and our undertail is now closed out and cosmetically pleasing. If you like what you see here, check out tstindustries.com. These parts are in stock and ready to sell and ready to ship to your house. And with this video, you'll be empowered to install the parts yourself with very simple tools. Again, tstindustries.com. Thank you for watching. Drop me a comment. I love hearing from you. Hit like and subscribe, and I'm out of here. See you later.